Tyler Dean McDowell. Hello.
Howdy.
You, sir, are an artist.
I try to be.
Oh, no, you are an artist. Let's just get right into this. What sparks somebody to sneak into the Magic Kingdom to shoot a music video?
You're going to have those guys in the black suits with the Mickey-shaped badge showing up at my front door, man.
Let's hope.
Um, Man, what sparks it? That's a loaded question. I've got two heroes. I say this often, but I've got two heroes. My dad and Walt Disney, both for the same reasons. They were dreamers who came from nothing and made those dreams come true. And it sounds cheesy, like something on a greeting card, but it is true. And I'm just trying to do the same. I admire both of those men for a multitude of reasons, for sticking through, trying to get their voices heard, make people happy. And I'm just trying to do the same. My dad wrote a song in 1977 with a guy named Lee Morgan, and it was about Elvis Presley and how his music affected my dad's life. And at that time, Elvis had just passed away, and everyone was mourning the loss of Elvis. And a lot of people like to peg my dad as an Elvis impersonator. He never wore a jumpsuit, sideburns, or anything. He would rather paint a house. But Elvis was his hero, and he just happened to sound a little bit like him. And it skyrocketed him. It sold 5 million copies in 2 weeks. And I think that's because what he was singing spoke to people. They were feeling that pain, and he gave them a theme song. And so that's what I was kind of hoping to do with this song. I was hoping and praying there were people that felt like me. I felt like there's a lot of, I don't want to be derogatory, but pixie dusters out there, people who cannot, they can't have their magic kingdom. They can't stand negativity. They're like, no, it's perfect. It's like even Walt would be constructive if he were alive today. And I was hoping that there were people that felt the same way I do, and that they would hear this song and that it would speak to them.
Well, not only did you tap into it, but it so mirrors what you just spoke about with your father and Elvis, and it taps into, I think, the same level of inspiration. You know, Walt Disney, Elvis Presley, these guys are the American dream personified. What compels, we know what compels you emotionally, but physically to pull this off. I mean, first of all, when did you do it, and how did you keep it under wraps?
So that's actually, it's funny you asked that question, because I've got some really good friends of mine who live in the Orlando area, and they didn't even know I was there, because I have a individual in my life who has been very influential. She's like a mother, and she told me once upon a time, she said, "Don't tell people your ideas. It's kind of like a sneeze. If you tell them, you've got all of this built up excitement and pressure, and once you tell them, it's like a relief. You feel as if you have already accomplished the thing." And so I try to keep things under wrap as much as I can, but I get too excited and I tell people. So I was trying to distance myself from everyone to not tell them what I was doing. The guy who's an incredible person, he owns the Airbnb that I stay at a lot in Kissimmee, Mauna Nui. It's themed to Trader Sam's, Adventureland, the Jungle Cruise, and all that. I didn't even tell him why I was there. I was just like, hey, if you can, please don't let anybody know that I'm here. I'm kind of working on something very special. And we went in, and I hope he doesn't mind me saying his name, but Travis Terrell, he was my DP that day when we shot on location at Magic Kingdom. And he didn't even hear the song. Like, I had it in my ear. If you pay attention, there are some times when I turn, you can actually see the little black earpiece where I'm listening to the song. So I didn't tell anybody, and it was difficult, but I'm glad that we were able to keep it a secret, because I just wanted to make sure that it did come come to fruition, because there's a lot of people out there that want to try to put a stop to things. And if you let them know that it's coming, then they're prepared. But I don't think anybody saw this coming.
No, you just hit on so many great notes, because keeping that to yourself strategically, okay, but how do you manage that excitement? Because the passion and the thrill of what you're about to accomplish, you've got to balance that with the mission. So it's got to be so hard to execute that covertly and keep all of that excitement, because I would be bursting at the seams to at least let somebody know what I'm up to, but that could potentially ruin everything.
Well, luckily, I have a cousin who he was also signed to Curb Records as well when he was younger, in a group with my brother. And he's an incredible talent. Listening to him sing, people tell me that I'm an okay singer. Like Chris is, he is an incredible singer. And he has done all of my background vocals for me post being let go from Curb. And we've worked together very closely on every single project, from Come to Nashville to Older Women. We did a version of Almost There from The Princess and the Frog. And I was able to talk to him. So anytime I got excited, we're talking about the project, I felt like I had an outlet where I could, discuss the thing.
And because you just touched on that, what does Disney mean to you? Beyond this mission, what does Disney mean to you? Because there's something brewing there.
This is so interesting, because normally when I do interviews, I have to talk about music and country music and stuff. So it's so nice to talk about. I'm passionate about music, and I'm passionate about a lot of things, filmmaking, screenwriting. I'm a novelist, but Disney is a big part of who I am. But, and I hope this don't turn some people away, I often say there is a big difference between a Disney fan and a Walt Disney fan. And I would consider myself a Walt Disney fan. The man, his ideals, what he was trying to accomplish, how he accomplished those things, that is what I admire. And he was flawed. He was a human. I'll never forget, and I need to find the interview because I love the clip, but there's an interview of Diane, his daughter, talking about, and I want to say, don't quote me on this, I want to say it was the day, the opening day of Disneyland. Either way, she remembers a moment where it was late at night and they were headed home, and Walt was in the back seat in like a fetal position, laying down, passed out. I don't know why he was passed out, but he was passed out, too many Scotch mists. But he was passed out, clutching the blueprints to Disneyland. And when I heard her say that, like, I was always a Walt Disney fan, but that to me made him human, because I have been there. I have, been holding on to stuff, praying, going, please let this happen. Please let this work. God, I hope this works. And I think that's something that the Walt Disney Company misses. This new animatronic show in Disneyland, what is it called? It's a Magical Life or whatever. Even the title scares me, because I want to tell them, I'm like, look, you want to make Walt in animatronic form. It goes against the Disney family's wishes. Okay, that's one thing. It's like, I understand why you're doing it. I mean, Walt did it with Abraham Lincoln. Like, what's the difference? There's a few. But it's like, if you're going to do it right, and understand why people like me, and I don't speak for everyone, but people like me, respect Walt. And he had flaws. He went through turmoil, and he still made it all happen.
No, I agree. And I do want to touch on your artistry, but I'm of the mindset that they should not be doing it at all. Okay. Yeah. Walt Disney should be honored. The legacy of Walt Disney should be honored, celebrated, and taught. And to reduce it down to a theme park attraction only speaks volumes to how misguided the company is.
Right. I don't want it to be a puppet for certain people's words. I don't want them to project certain people's opinions through Walt Disney. If you're using his words from his interviews, that's fine, but don't let him be a parrot.
So your passion for and I identify again with that, because I am a Walt person, for all the flaws, and what makes the company so special is the founder, and there are few people in our lifetime that come around that reach that status, and we should be teaching it and honoring it so that we can inspire the next generation. Okay, so
Right.
obviously you had that passion brewing inside of you, but to get back to the execution, how do you put this together? How do you
Uh,
how do you actually say, I mean, do you have a shot list for this? How do you get into Disney World and covertly execute this? It's obvious you're playing back, you're doing a music video. It doesn't look like an iPhone. It looks like you got a whole film crew. How do you sneak a
yeah,
film crew into Disney World?
it's just me and one guy, man. It's the magic of filmmaking. He is using a Sony. I was trying to think of the model. A Sony. He's going to kill me. Sony A7S or something like that. Just a regular DSLR. Um, and I'm a producer, like as in film. You know, I produce my own music as well with Stacey Hogan. Uh, we've been working closely together for years, but I've produced all my own music videos. I mentioned that I'm a screenwriter. There's a period where I'll listen to the song in its finished form for ever. Like I'll listen for days and think about the story and what is actually unfolding. With Older Women, which was a remake of my dad's first number one record, which he had in 1981. I did it as kind of like an homage to that era and to him. And I knew what the story was going to be. I, before I even, uh, had the ability, the means to record the song or do the video, I knew what I wanted. And with this song, it was very much the same. I mean, I knew that I wanted to be in certain locations when I'm saying certain things. Didn't get to do some of those because, and I'm so glad it happened because I'll always remember when, even when I'm old, I'll be like, what day did I shoot that video? I can always remember the day that we shot there because that is when that was the last big sewage leak in Frontierland. And I couldn't get on the Liberty Bell, which is what I wanted to do. But we went to the People Mover and we did most of it there, which worked out great because there was a comment. I think it was on YouTube, may have been on Twitter or X, whatever we're calling it. Someone said, "Can you please do a song about our people mover out here in Disneyland?" They're like, "Because we really miss it." And I was like, "Well, it's actually one of the reasons." I was like, "Okay, you know what? We'll do it on the people mover because it's kind of like a subliminal thing. You know, the Disneyland community, they need their people mover." So
And you can shoot that out all day long. The the technical side fascinates me, and then I love the there's a poetic aspect to you doing this whole thing to save rivers of America, and the one thing that you can't get on to shoot is the boat on the river. I mean, it's
uh,
you couldn't
yeah,
ask for anything better than that. How did you
yeah.
not get caught though? I mean, did you feel like somebody was on to you?
I'll be honest with you. My whole plan was if anyone ever tried to stop me, um, I was just going to say, and first off, I was raised to be, a good person, like to try to be a good person and not be unkind to people. So wherever we went, I was just making jokes and talking to the cast members and never told them what I was doing. I said that I had a photographer who was capturing me, which was not an untruth. And but I've never really had to. I'm trying to clean this up, but show my bad side. But if I was ever pulled off to an office or in Mickey jail, I was going to tell whoever tried to stop me, I was going to be like, hey, look, if you stop me, you're going to have to stop Tim Tracker, Justin Scard, paging Mr. Tom Morrow, or I forget his actual name. I know that guy,
Right.
not personally,
You're
but
unleashing
all of
the
these.
mob.
Yeah, you're gonna have to stop all of them because I'm not making anything off of this. Like, and I'm not being derogatory at all whatsoever. I'm speaking my mind, and all of those other people are making money filming in your parks, and
Right.
I'm not.
Right.
So that was my whole plan, and I honestly I don't think we did anything wrong at all whatsoever.
No, I don't think you did. Now, you touched on something that's kind of interesting. I was thinking about this in preparation for this interview. As somebody that made a living streaming the parks, do you recall a few years back there was a film that went to Sundance that filmed all in Disney
Yeah,
World?
I've thought about that. What is it called?
The name escapes me at this moment.
Edge of Tomorrow or something like that, or no,
Tomorrow was in the title.
Escaping Tomorrow or
Thank you.
something.
There it is.
Yeah.
So I think the problem there was the commercialization. Now, what you're doing isn't commercialization per se, and it's certainly not more commercialization than the streaming and monetization that goes on inside the park. So I don't think
Correct.
that you did anything wrong. I don't think you did anything wrong anyway. I love the mission. That's why I wanted to talk to you. I applaud
Thank
you.
Thank you.
What I hope is that you've embarrassed them, and that if this gets out to enough people, because that's the damage, right? And by the way, if you've never been to Mickey Jail, it's fabulous. So I applaud you.
Don't ruin it for me. I've got this like terrifying image. You don't want to go to Mickey Jail.
They'll love you. Yeah, they'll love you. But and they'll agree with you too, probably, and be like, we can't do anything about it. We're just trying to get paid. You know what I mean? It's like a bunch of New Yorkers. So you're hitting into something so special. And I think that the embarrassing element, and I've been saying this prior to us talking, that's the thing people need to tap into. It's if you embarrass them, and you're obviously not afraid of doing that, that's why they'll ban you. They can ban you for whatever they want. You obviously don't care about that. You're not going out there and commercializing this. That is not your intent. If you embarrass them effectively and force them to respond, you win. And I gotta believe.
Yeah, I just want to.
Don't care if they respond.
I just want to wake. I want to wake some people up.
Right.
People within the company. Maybe they already know that what they're doing is wrong. Maybe they're doing so intentionally and they don't care. I would like to wake a lot of Disney fans or self-proclaimed Disney fans. Frontierland was described in the Disneyland show as tall tales and true from the legendary past. And people say, well, it's not a museum. And a lot of these statements people make, they're hard to argue with. I'll be honest with you. It's like, well, you're right. Walt did like change and he did like progress, and I'm sure our buddy mutual friend Josh could say all of this a lot more eloquently than me. But at a certain point, you still need to stay true to what I would call the foundational pillars of what makes a magical kingdom magical. And in every single one of the preliminary designs, either drawn by or approved by Walt of a magical kingdom, included a river in a land that celebrated tall tales and true from the legendary past. So at a certain point, it's like, if you don't disagree, or if you disagree with that, are you a Disney fan? Like, who are you? Like, what do you like? Do you just like cheap entertainment? Well, then you're not a Disney fan. You could have fun at any other theme park. Like, if you want to say you're a Disney fan, then you have to cherish and the original intent of the founder. And I just pointed to my painting, which is right over here.
Which we're going to get to, because again, artistry. I mean, I'm scratching the surface here. I hope you don't have anywhere to be for the next 8 hours.
It's all right. I'm sorry. I am my father's son, so I hope I'm not talking your ear off. Ask me what time it is. I'll tell you how to build a clock.
No, please. And then I'll ask you to repeat it.
Okay.
Okay. So just kind of pausing here for a minute, figuratively speaking. You decide you're going to do this. And you recognize that there could be a response from Disney. And when I say you don't care, you're not worried. But is there anyone or anything telling you that you shouldn't do this? And then how do you navigate that?
I think my dad is very wise. He's been in the business a long time, and as a father, I think that he's definitely offered his guidance. He's told me I'm going to ruffle some feathers, but I think, and I don't speak for him, but I think maybe he thinks the feathers need to be ruffled. I don't think what I've done is cause for any kind of prosecution, um, if it leads to a conversation where I can look at Bob Iger and tell him, like, or ask him, what are you thinking? um, and it's not just to Bob. It's not just to Josh Diamaro or however you say his name. Apologize for the mispronunciation. I'm from the American South, but it is all the fans that support these types of decisions. Um, and I hope that my biggest hope, I'd say, is that I just hope that it starts conversation. That's it. Like, we need to talk about this. We need to talk about how much money certain people are making. And I think that this is another thing. I think there needs to be a benchmark for inflation. We need to sit down and go, okay, how much money did Walt Disney make in his pocket? Okay, no CEO should ever make more, adjusted for inflation, than the guy who started it all, period. You can make a penny less if you want to, but you can't make any more because you have not done anything better than he could do. So why are you making more money?
And that's a larger conversation about executive level
Yeah,
compensation as a whole,
right,
which I'm
right.
totally on board with. I want to go back to what you said about Walt versus Disney. There's a lot of Disney fans. Okay. There are not a lot of people that are Walt Disney fans. And I think there's some folks
So
who
strange
consider
to me.
themselves Disney fans who will cherry pick what Walt said. But Walt also said that the park should be plussed. So we should have a foot in the past, the present, and the future. And if we're going to do things, they should elevate, they should be plussed. He never said
Right.
destroy things at the detriment
And replace.
of these core principles. He never said disregard the mission statement. You can have it all, and that's why they were so successful. So I find it so interesting that people try to cherry pick what Walt had to say, but at the end of the day, you don't need to do that because Walt said it all, and he proved with nuance that he could be successful doing what so many people told him not to do. And that's what you've tapped into.
Thank you. I don't want to get all weird on you. Didn't even know if I was going to say this, but as I was working on the painting, I literally felt as if someone, not going to say Walt or whatever, but I did feel like someone said thank you.
Yeah.
Truly. And it brought me to tears. So
This is about you and the cause of Rivers of America. And so I'm not going to inject any personal aspects into this, but I just want you to know what you just said is not weird at all, because there is a personal aspect of this that resonates with me that makes this almost like universe affirming. So when I said to you before we started this, I think you are the missing link in this cause. I truly believe that because I think you are the sum of all of these things that have been occurring. And I feel everything that you feel. It is the legacy of one. Who's going to do what Walt Disney accomplished? How are we going to reduce him down to Stitch? Okay, to a theme park animatronic. And I love Stitch, but how are we going to reduce the fat? And that just shows how far off the mark they are.
yeah. Oh, trust me, I wholeheartedly agree.
And so the grind to do this video, so obviously you were consulting with your father, not to put him on blast, but obviously look.
No.
Your father took Elvis's death, sold what, 5 million records? Okay.
In 2 weeks. Yeah.
In 2 weeks. What moment are you seizing? Because you are right there. This is such a parallel moment for you.
Yeah. He has a friend of his, Steve Jeppy, who used to own a substantially large pop culture museum in Baltimore, and it has now been put into the Smithsonian. And Jeppy actually owned the original Ub Iwerks Plain Crazy Mickey Mouse sketches, the preliminary sketches. And Diane tried to, not to put her on blast, but Diane actually called Steve and tried to get those drawings for the family museum, but she wanted them for free. And Steve was like, Diane, I paid a lot of money for these. Like, I love your dad, but and of course I'm paraphrasing, but he was like, I love your dad, but I can't just give you these drawings. Um, but the reason I bring him up is him and my dad are like that. They're best friends. And Steve told him, he said, everything happens for a reason. My dad drove to Graceland for Elvis's funeral in 77 and waited in that long line. And then when he got to the gates, they closed the gates. And him and his friend that was with him, they turned around and they were like, well, okay. So they got in their car and they drove home. And it was when he got to Nashville and there's a bridge going over the Cumberland. Right when you get to that bridge is when he heard the first words. I was barely 6 years old when I first heard him sing. And he wrote that. He went to Lee Morgan. They kind of combined two songs, one that Lee had written, one that Dad was working on, and then they made The King Is Gone. Dad went into the studio. He recorded it, didn't have any money. He wrote a hot check to pay for the track because nobody else would pay for it.
Love that.
And he had some demos made. He took it to the radio station, and the phone lines just blew up. The guy, literally, the DJ, of course, I'm cutting a long story short, but the DJ that was standing there looked at Dad and was like, hang on a minute, something's wrong with my phones because all of the lines were lighting up. So Steve Jeffy told my dad, he said, when you were at Graceland and those gates closed, if they hadn't closed, you wouldn't have turned around. You wouldn't have gotten your car. You wouldn't have been on that bridge. You wouldn't have thought about that song, and none of it would have happened that way.
Isn't that crazy?
And he said, fate is a hunter, and it found you. And so I don't know if fate is, going to find me ever, but because I've been doing this a long time, but I felt like someone needed to say something. It's ridiculous. We can have the tired Splash Mountain talk all day long. We can talk about all of these changes they're making. I was upset when they destroyed my home resort, which was the Coronado Springs. I don't like the big Viva Las Vegas tower. Part of the charm of the Coronado Springs for me was that it was secluded, quiet, with classical Spanish guitar playing in the background. And now you got this massive, huge, it's beautiful, but it changed the resort. And I jokingly would tell people, I was like, what if they did that to the Polynesian? Would y'all like that? And now,
yeah, well, they were probably listening.
Yeah, so maybe so. But then when it came to the rivers of America, um, I genuinely believe that they don't like the name of it, and they don't like what it represents. And I challenge them to prove me wrong by keeping it.
Let's back up a second, just because I think there might have been a technology hiccup, and I don't want to have to worry about it.
No, you're fine.
And I agree. You don't think that they like the fact that the name America is in Rivers of America?
Yeah, I challenge them to prove me wrong, but by keeping the Rivers of America. But I think that it is possible that potentially they do not necessarily like traditional American values. They think that the romanticizing the American West, which it's ironic because if we hadn't went out west, there would be no Disneyland out there. So that's interesting. But yeah, I don't think they like the history of America. And, that's another conversation for another time. But at the same time, it goes back to what I was saying about being a Disney fan. Walt liked America, and he liked the American West and our history. That's why he made the land. So if you don't like it and you don't like what Walt liked, are you really a Disney fan? It's just kind of strange to me.
Well, and I got to go back again to what you said about getting arrested. That would only validate everything you're talking about right now. So that would never happen. And I'm going to ask you straight up. Are you a conservative?
Go ahead. You know what? My dad has a good friend in the business. His name is Bill Medley of the Righteous Brothers. And he told my dad one time, he said, never talk about politics because it will divide your audience. So I try to leave all that stuff personal.
Well, and that's a great answer. The reason I
But
ask you, go on.
I will say if you pay attention, people may be able to decipher
Yeah,
wherever
I
I
would go out
stand.
on a limb and suggest you are. And I'm only bringing that up not for the purposes of vilification, but people would
No, no,
attribute
you're
to what
fine.
you just said to a conservative viewpoint.
I would concur. Absolutely.
I am not a conservative. I agree 100% with what you just said. That's why I wanted to bring that up, because
Yeah.
it is so easy to pass that statement off through the lens of politics, because we have made celebrating America, we have made the American dream, we have even made the American flag, we have made them political props, and we have vilified them, particularly the
Yeah.
flag. And my concern with Rivers, and we didn't even start this podcast off with the mission, we just got into it because I think we both implicitly understand
I've
the
enjoyed
value.
every second of it. I just want you to know.
I am too, sir. But I think because we implicitly understand the mission, we didn't even touch on that. It is the heart and soul of Disney World,
Right.
and it is the beginning of ripping out American history from the parks.
Well, I do want to touch a little bit on why, because for a while I found it difficult to articulate why it's so important. If you just say, well, it's ambiance, that's 100% true and valid and should be the only argument you need. But people, it's not strong enough for people. Walt walked around the Tivoli Gardens and obsessed over how it was laid out and how beautiful it was. And I mean, I would say, I don't want to give a percentage. I've never been there, but I would imagine that not a lot of it is man-made. It's all beautiful nature, creeks and trees and all of that. And that is crucial to set the environment in a theme park. And now people will say, well, the Cars thing is going to have all of the landscape and stuff. Well, I'd argue that probably, or I'd be willing to bet that a lot of it is going to look like Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, which is not real. And we know that. It's all fake trees and stuff. So it's not the same. But I found a new argument. It's not really even an argument. It's just, it makes the most sense to me. These parks, these theme parks, they are sources of inspiration, well springs of inspiration. And if you are going on a riverboat and you're a kid, you're like, just say 10, 12 years old, and you look out into the woods and you see a cabin and there's a fire inside the cabin, you're like, oh, what's going on in there? Immediately, your imagination starts to go and you're trying to figure it out. If you see Tow Mater and Lightning McQueen sitting there, the answer is handed to you. It doesn't inspire creativity. So that is why I think places like the Rivers of America, centerpieces like that don't necessarily connect to an intellectual property that you already know is so important, because it doesn't, if it has the intellectual property, it doesn't inspire imagination and creativity.
Well, you're right. It's the blank slate that it represents. And when you look out across that
Yes.
river and you see the opportunity across the frontier and you see everything that this country represents, it's just built in. And it is what makes Disney, it's what makes the Magic Kingdom the Magic Kingdom. And if you rip the heart out of that, the number one theme park in the world based off of attendance, then you are going to slowly erode not just the company, but you're going to erode business in Orlando, tourism as a whole, I would argue. Because it is the Magic Kingdom that props up the rest of the Disney parks. And people are going to talk about Epic Universe and all of this, but that's not enough of a counterbalance. Just look at the metrics. So to rip the heart out of something that is so valuable to business in the state, it just seems like such a self-inflicted wound. And your lyrics, by the way, capture all of this. I mean, that's the other thing. You just keep going back and back.
Thank you.
The time you put into the lyrics alone How long did it take you to write the song? Just the song.
So I got the idea, and I was trying to think, like, because I knew we were going to do this, and I was like, it has been such a whirlwind. Obviously, I look a little different. I got the scruff going on, and I told myself, I said, because I do all my own editing, my color grading, and everything. I don't do all of this stuff alone. I tell people that all the time. My cousin Chris, who I mentioned previously, he's like my brother. He jokingly would always say, "Man, you're the captain. You're the captain of the ship, right?" And I tell him, I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'm standing at the helm, but it's everybody else that gets us there. Like everybody running around tying ropes and riggings and stuff. So I can't do this without a crew. And I told Chris, I said, I'm not going to shave until I get this thing done. I said, I'm just going to let it go. I said, because I was so stressed out. I was sitting at the computer and now it's out and done, but I've got all this stuff. I'm like, well, I'm going to shave it off now. So,
Hey, you're only
but
halfway there. You're only halfway there, though.
I know, man, but dude, it looks like I got the mange when I try to grow a beard.
Look,
But
I got no room to talk. So, I mean, between the white patches, I mean, forget about it. Looks like
hey,
I ran
man,
into
no,
a
that's
cloud.
no, dude, that's the Clooney thing going on, the Sean Connery thing. I love that.
I've never heard either of those names uttered in my presence. So the,
Talking about
but
the
just tell me,
lyrics.
yeah. But how long did that take? And then how long did you shoot the video for?
So we actually, sorry, that's what I was trying to get at. I know I talk so much, but
No, I love it, man. I'm
I
loving
was
every minute.
trying to remember. Thank you. Nobody's ever said that to me before.
Well,
But
we're just gonna we're even.
uh, I was trying to remember exactly how it all happened, but like I said, it's just been so crazy. Trying to get it all together, it's just been a constant blur. But I think I got the idea when it was right after the D23 Expo and they revealed first off the Cars thing in the Magic Kingdom. I thought Mickey Views, I think that's his name. I thought he was like speaking out as you know what. I was like, there's no way they're putting Cars in the Magic Kingdom. They're not going to do it behind Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. No way. And then I thought, well, no, they will because that's cheaper. What he's proposing, that's cheaper than actually building the full on Radiator Springs. I was like, so maybe they are going to do this. And then they announced it at the D23 Expo. And then, like the sly people they are, they go the next day after when everybody's gone, they were like, oh, by the way, we're filling in the rivers of America to do it. And that's when I just got the idea. I literally thought to myself, I was like, Bob, what are you thinking? And I called my cousin Chris. I was like, hey, I got this song. I'm going to try to hammer it out myself. But if I get it to a certain point, will you help me with it? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. Of course, he went to Disney with my dad and our family years ago, but he doesn't really remember it. So he's all just like listening to me about this stuff. He has no idea what's going on, but he's an incredible lyricist. And I forget what night it was, but we sat on FaceTime and just hammered it out. And he is actually the one that included the line, "The river's running dry." That was all Chris. He was like, "Man, you tell me about this river." He was like, "The river's running dry, dude." And I was like, "Oh my God."
I just got chills when you said that, though. Like
So,
that I just felt that.
yeah.
Wow. And so
I didn't
from
want to make nobody cry, but a lot of
let
people have told me that it's made them tear up.
it's the only reason it hasn't made me tear up yet is because my mind's been spinning about this. My mind's been spinning about this interview and all of that. And I know when I go back to do the editing and I'm like sitting there watching it over and over again is when I'm gonna start. I'm gonna message you and be
Just
like, "What did you
just make
do?
me look okay, right? Just make me look all right, man.
How many days did it take to shoot?"
Yeah. So it was actually just a 2-day shoot, but it was spread out over the course of a month, I believe. So I went down to Orlando, like I said previously, in secret. Um, Woke up at like 6 o'clock in the morning. Travis met me at the Airbnb. Like I said, he had never even heard the song. And you had asked me, you know, if I knew like shots and things that I wanted. And I did, but I had never put it on paper because I say all of my music videos, but it's just two thus far. That is I've always had this dream of having a series of music videos that tell an overarching story. And kind of as silly as it sounds, kind of like the MCU. And so most of my music videos, Come to Nashville and Older Women, they were like a narrative. They had a story. They had post-credit scenes and everything. So that took some time to write. But as far as what Walt would say, I knew it was just going to be performance shots of me in the parks and then me painting. But then when the day came and I was already down in Orlando, I was like, Travis, he knows nothing like about this. He has no idea. Like, he hasn't read a script. He doesn't know anything. And I was like, he's got to have some kind of outline. So I sat there that next morning and I wrote a quick treatment just for every line where I wanted to be or timestamps because I didn't want to give him the lyrics. And it's not that I didn't trust Travis. It's just I didn't want anybody to know. I was trying to keep it close to the vest. And of course, he kind of picked it up. We were on the ferry heading to Magic Kingdom. And he said something to me and I wrote it down. I have a terrible memory, but I wrote it down and I was like, I cannot believe you just said that because, I know, hang on. Oh crap. I almost had it. It's one of the lines from the song and he literally said it and he's never heard it. Nobody had at that point. My cousin Chris had just heard it. My dad, me, and obviously our producer Stacy. And I looked at him and I was just like, that is so ironic that you just said that. And he was like, why? And I was like, can't tell you. But he had said one of the lines from the song. And we just went from there. He just started filming me. And then, of course, I had to arrange a location here in Nashville that I could set up and paint in a little bit. Now, of course, I'm not really painting the painting in the video. It took me a month to paint the Walt painting, but that's all Hollywood magic.
It's a whole other piece of artistry we got to talk about. What was the lyric? You don't recall?
Let's see. Hang on, give me a second.
It just
doesn't feel the same.
It doesn't feel the same.
He said, man, it just doesn't feel the same. And I was like, dude, that's like the first line of the song. Like, he goes, huh? And I was like, yeah, just trust me. We have to go with it. I can't tell you the rest.
He's like, wait, we're shooting a music video?
He did know. He did know it was a music video. He did know that.
Yeah, but you always have that guy who's like, I'll get in the trench with you. You tell me what we're doing once we're there.
Yeah, you know what, man? And honestly, you say that, but it's hard. It's hard to find people nowadays. People just don't, most people don't want to participate.
More notes you're hitting right on the head, man. We have gotten to the point, and that's the problem with this whole thing too, is we don't have a culture that motivates. People are very complacent. People like to stay in their bubble. They don't want to have conversations that could they'll argue online in the comments.
Of course, because there's no repercussions.
Exactly. But in terms of living their lives, they try to kind of stay in their bubble and do their thing. So it takes not just putting yourself out there, okay, but it takes a certain level of risk with what you're doing. Now, do I really think, again, that there's really going to be any legal repercussions here? Of course not. But there's still a certain amount of risk involved in what you're doing. And I don't think most people talk. And what you say about I had to do it before I talked about doing it speaks volumes. Because if you would have told people you're doing it, most people would be, okay, whatever. It's time to spice up your kitchen with Pampered Chef. Pampered Chef has all the goodies from spatulas, mandolins, and amazing pots and pans, not to mention knives. Plus, don't miss out on small appliances like the deluxe air fryer and coffee maker. Spice up your kitchen today. Go to pamperedchef.com/PWS/Colleen Herman. Pamperedchef.com/PWS/Colleen Herman. And with no estate plan, you could be leaving those you love the most with high taxes, probate fees, and an incomplete or divided estate and legal fights and fees. If you live in Florida, contact RK Law for a free consultation to discuss the options you have and the tools available to protect your home, savings, and estate for those you love the most. To get started, send an email to russell@rklawpro.com or call 786-566-2456 to set up your consultation today. That's russell@rklawpro.com. And if you're in the market for a 3D printer, visit flashforge.com. With printers starting at under $300, you can begin your 3D adventures today. Visit flashforge.com. And while you're online, head over to Etsy and the Theme Park Factory. The Theme Park Factory on Etsy is a great way to support this channel. Pick up a Joe Coconut and bring a little bit of the Theme Park Factory to your home. But then you just did it, and then it's so Joshua didn't even know.
No.
So is there any point during filming this video where you, or even this process as a whole, where you just said, I might just scrap this whole thing? And if so, what kept you going?
I don't think so. I think that I think it had to be done. I think I had already. Contrary to popular belief, I'm not in really a position where I can buy fancy things, buy a car or anything like that. So I'm kind of negative in the bank account quite often. So, I had already spent money that I didn't have to go down to Florida and buy my ticket, which that was another shot we didn't get that I wanted. I wanted at the beginning to show that I was paying for my ticket to get in. Like, I'm actually giving you money. I'm not making money in here. I'm giving you money to be in here and do this. But we didn't get that shot because there was a crazy line right outside Magic Kingdom because it was early in the morning. So we didn't get that. But no, I think I had already invested so much time that I was just laser focused. I was like, we got to get this done. And Travis had to go to a concert later that evening, country music concert, which was ironic, of an artist who my cousin Chris used to like hang out with because they were roommates. Like his roommate was roommates with them as a whole one of those, related to the cousin of the sister, whatever. But I told him, I was like, I forget who it was. It wasn't Kelly Pickler, somebody else. He's gonna kill me. But anyway, I said, next time if I ever see her, I'm gonna be like, hey, my DP had to cut out early on me because he was going to your concert, But we got it done, man. We got it done.
And then, so you went back and kind of planned a second day as sort of pickups?
No, no, I knew that I was going to shoot because we actually shot the scenes of me painting in Gallatin, Tennessee, which is, about maybe 15, 20 minutes outside of Nashville. Because I don't think they want me carrying that big old canvas into the Magic Kingdom.
Imagine. That might blow up your spot.
Yeah. That might make them suspicious.
How would you, when we talk about Walt's legacy being at risk, how would you sum that up? I mean, why do you think it's at risk as a whole?
Well, you asked some good questions. I think Walt's legacy has been at risk for a long time. I'm not going to say after his death because there were people like his brother Roy and Michael Eisner, people who cared.
And Eisner
and
never got the credit he deserved. I'll just say that.
No, I'm an Eisner stan. I'll tell him to his face, decisions made later in his career were different, but I don't think that's his fault. Him and Frank Wells were an incredible duo. They were essentially Walt and Roy. I think that the Walt Disney Company should be ran by two people, a creative and a business person. That's when it thrives.
Couldn't agree more.
And here's the thing. If you're a board member or you are the board, why wouldn't you agree with me? Because it's logic. It's like, oh, the company did well when it was ran by a creative and a business person. the first time. Okay. Then it was great when it was ran because, okay, I would argue that the Eisner era is almost just as important as the Walt and Roy era.
Critical.
Because think about it. Yeah. Think about it. When you think about anything Walt Disney World, okay? The Tower of Terror, Typhoon Lagoon, Blizzard Beach, pretty much all of the resorts, all of these attractions that we've come to know and love. It's the Eisner era.
Well, but first of all, I couldn't agree more with that sentiment, and it is coming off of fighting a hostile acquisition. And it's funny because, for a company that leans so much on the data, you pose a great point. Look at the data. If you're the board, look at the data.
Right.
You've always thrived. That's why I believe Stags and Mayor are the answer to the problem. But
I agree.
You wrote one off. Okay, Mayor went through his little dance with TikTok for 6 months. So now you got to buy Candle Media. They're being paid as consultants anyway. And you're going to bring in Dana Walden from Fox, who's going to further not understand the brand. But just to go back to this. So Eisner and Wells.
You talk about Walt's legacy.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, you had asked me. I didn't forget. You had asked me about Walt's legacy. I was going to get there, just so you know. I ain't going to forget.
No, you're good. It's just I'm the same way, man. Now I'm on my tangent because
right.
It is Imagineering was dormant before Eisner and Wells came in and woke it up out of a slump. Literally, the driver didn't know where the building was when he said, "Take me to Glendale." Okay, so it is so crucial that relationship of Eisner and Wells that gets us to a global powerhouse that Iger can expand on. Now you can argue that the post-Wells years with Eisner were very problematic. Okay,
that's right.
But all of that to say that I don't think that I don't think that Michael Eisner was trying to be Walt Disney. He was trying to celebrate Walt Disney and honor it, and it showed. And so I'll use all that to bring us back to the question about what all of that means to you,
Yeah, there's a clip. I don't know where he was, but Michael, and of course I'm going to paraphrase, so I don't want to butcher it, but Michael Eisner says something to the extent of like, I did not come into this company to change anything. I wanted to continue what Mr. Disney, what Walt and his associates, started all those years ago. That is not what anybody thinks in that company. And I'll die on that hill right now. They don't think that way.
So I'll ask you
Eisner
again.
did.
Why do you think Walt's legacy is at risk?
Yeah. So the reason I brought all that up is like I don't want to say because I think Walt's legacy has been in danger for a long time. I don't want to say that it was in danger when Eisner was in power or anything like that. I don't. It just if you go back to Walt's quote, it all started with a mouse. And I hope we don't lose sight of one thing. Okay. I get if people kill me, they try to ridicule me all the time for this. You don't know what Walt would want. Like, okay, you do realize that there is such a thing as a historian. And I'm not claiming to be one, but when you watch the History Channel and you listen to, you see Edgar the Third thoughts that yada, yada, yada. It's like you take his advice, right? He's a historian because he has read on this person and he realizes with deductive reasoning, 1 + 1 = 2. And so whoever they're talking about might have felt this way because of the things they did in the past. So you can come up with a good summation or an idea of what one person might think. So when I say like, Walt meant this or whatever, people go, you don't know what he meant. And no, I pretty much do. When Walt, because I've read every book, listened to every interview, watched every biography on Walt Disney. And when he said, I hope we never lose sight of one thing, that it was all started by a mouse, he wasn't saying, I want you to put Mickey Mouse on everything. He wasn't saying that. Walt lived in the office of his bankrupt studio, eating cold beans out of a can, taking showers once a week at Union Station, when he found that little mouse that he trained to run into a circle on that piece of paper. That was humble beginnings. That is what he meant. I hope we never lose sight of our humble beginnings. I'd give anything if I had a time machine so I could go back and be like, hey, when you say that, put a little thing underneath that says, what I mean by this is, I hope we never lose sight of our humble beginnings. When I was in that office alone with no money, broke, and all I had to do was play with that little mouse. And that's the one that inspired Mickey. Okay. So his legacy has been tarnished for a while. They're using him as a commercial outlet to sell product. If that continues, if you continue to, and I hope this is not too bad to say, but bastardize his words and what he meant by them, that's going to tarnish his legacy. If you don't care about simple things like Walt liked, I don't know, I'm at a loss for words here, but balance, the way he designed Epcot, symmetry. That's the word I was looking for. He liked symmetry. The way he designed the city, it was all balanced. I know because I'm OCD too. And then you go to Epcot, and the first thing you do for the spine is you bulldoze half of it and make it unbalanced. It's like, well, that doesn't matter. And no, it would have to Walt. So when you start doing things like that and you start changing the fundamental foundations of the things that he created, that I think is going to continue to tarnish his legacy.
Yeah. And
I hope you can make sense out of the nonsensical
it's
ramblings.
thematic integrity. And it is, when you start to talk to people about this, you'll lose them because most people don't care about that, right? It's rides. How many rides did you go on today? So I appreciate everything you're saying and I understand it. I guess if I'm looking at it from the mission as a whole, because I don't think everybody that hears this and sees this video is going to get it at that level. But what would you want? Because look, the passion, the dedication, the determination, much like your father, it's all there. And you feel it the second you start watching this video, you feel it. So what would be the one thing, obviously saving the rivers of America is the mission here, but what is the one thing you want people to walk away? Is there one moment in this video that encapsulates what you want people to remember and walk away from when they finally embrace this? Because I'm telling you, you've only scratched the surface. You are about to go on a wild ride, my friend.
Man, I wish I would have prepared for that. Because like I said, you asked such great questions. I think I want people, if you claim to be a Disney fan, to not be afraid to be constructive. Do not be afraid of what you may perceive as negativity. It's not. When you are constructive, like saying gold spray paint on the spire of Sleeping Beauty Castle is not good enough, that is not being negative. That is being constructive. And that's okay. Because if we continue to pretend that everything is wonderful and happy and oh boy, then it's not going to be for too long.
Right. And being critical of something you care about is just more passion. It's being indifferent that allows these decisions to be made. And there's obviously nobody at the top that cares enough.
I'll give you an example.
Please.
I think it was the D23 Expo before the last one. Maybe it was the one before that. I'm not sure. Whenever they announced the Disney Skyliner, the whole arena erupted in applause. And I was so taken aback by that. I was so confused because I'm like, stop. If I could get on stage and grab the microphone from Bob and go, wait a minute, stop, shush. Why are y'all cheering? Wouldn't you rather them expand the monorail? Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that look cool, seeing the monorail pull up outside of Animal Kingdom? Like, why are you cheering for this obvious? It's a very efficient system. I'm not gonna like I've ridden it a few times. I'm not gonna want to ride it in 5 or 10 years. So like I'd be scared to death. Like rust is gonna fall apart. But I'm like, wouldn't y'all rather have a new fleet of monorail trains? Like, wouldn't y'all cheer for that? And then I would love to hear the murmur, like everybody going, well, yeah, 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 yeah.
They've done a great job.
But yeah, build a monorail. Yeah, boo. See, that's what they need to do because that is a perfect example of like, if you are critical in that moment, if everybody, when they announced the Skyliner, would have booed,
Yeah.
you might have a monorail train now.
Yeah, but everybody in that audience now,
It's okay to be critical.
everybody in that audience now considers themselves a content creator. So they don't want to trade perceived access. Okay. So it's very hard to find people that are going to be honest about it. And at the end of the day, the reason they don't want to, and I understand cost, but they don't want to do the monorail because the monorail it's like something now like $40 million for a mile of track, I believe. It's insane.
You mean Bob's salary?
But exactly. But on top of that, they never even replaced the monorails the first time around. These monorails, they're actually affectionately known as the duct tape monorails internally. Okay. The monorails are falling apart. Okay, I've watched doors been kicked shut to make sure that the sensors latch. So you're talking about an antiquated system, and instead of saying, let's put some money into maintaining this, they'll go put a stock system over there. And then to your point, in 10 years' time, that'll be at the same level the monorail's at, and you won't want to ride it.
Right.
Like people don't notice it because they're on vacation. I'm there all the time, or I had been for a while. And I'm telling you, on a regular, there's a monorail door being kicked shut because the sensors aren't working. And it's just stuff like that.
It's bad.
But it was never, first of all, Walt would have walked around and like just taken a red Sharpie and X'd things. You know what I mean? That was the kind of guy he was.
And he would have been called negative.
Everybody's got an opinion in this world, you know what I mean? And I think the other problem is that we live in this very toxic social media culture where everybody's got an opinion and everything is very, what's the word I'm looking for? Everything is very staunch. Everything is very blood sport. So whether we're talking politics or Disney, people will come at you with the same level of anger because people are just angry. And like I'll often not even tweet something out to somebody because I'm like, I don't want to get my head bitten off just for having an opinion. So I'll just keep it to myself.
Oh, I got ridiculed years ago. I had built up quite a following on social media platforms within the Disney community. It's what I always wanted because I wanted to be accepted, find a group, find my people. I went out to California by myself for the first time. I've been out to California many times before, obviously, but by myself for the first time, and went to the D23 Expo, the first D23 Expo, or D23, whatever we're calling it now. For some reason, they wanted to drop the Expo. But, in my life, like I am the only one of me. Like I'm the Disney guy. I'm the pop culture consumer. I'm the kid that buys collectibles that nobody really understands. My dad, he gets it, but not really. That's not his thing. He don't like things, as he says. But he supports me. But I've never had a group of friends that were like me. So when I went out to the expo for the first time, suddenly I was in a ocean of people like me. And it was weird. Like, I was like, you mean I'm not the only person who knows who Tony Baxter is? Like, yeah, he's downstairs, man. I got my picture with him. I'm like, huh? So that was very strange. So, I knew that there were people out there that kind of thought like me and liked the same things that I like. So I really wanted to get into that community. And once I got let go from the record label, I thought, okay, well, this is my chance to kind of prove that I think I know what I'm doing at least. And maybe I can reach the people like me. And I built up quite a following. And then when I'll say this first. So when I was a kid growing up, my dad had a good friend who was in the movie business in Hollywood, good friends with Ron Howard. and had connections within the Walt Disney Company. And we got sent the best quality you could have at the time, Song of the South. And so I was the only kid that I knew that actually grew up with Song of the South. So I love the movie, love James Baskett, love Splash Mountain. And when it closed, I was vocal about it on Twitter. And boy, they ate me alive. I lost every follower. I mean, I got death threats. Like, it was horrible. I won't name names, but obviously, because I ain't gonna do that. But somebody who I really thought was a friend of mine, he even he unfollowed me, and it was devastating. So yeah, talking about Twitter and how people can be, I'm all too familiar.
Oh, and listen, I come from the world of TikTok, and I love Song of the South. I collect Brer Rabbits. I've been collecting Brer Rabbits forever. And so I have
I'll buy anything you have, because I didn't really get to buy anything.
We'll talk actually. We'll talk because I have like an extra unopened Brer Bear McDonald's OG Happy Meal toy back here somewhere.
Take it.
Just like random stuff. Like, listen, if you can see a little bit of what's going on behind me.
Hey, just
yes, sir.
Pause. Can you pause for like 20 seconds?
Yeah.
I've got to do this. I got to do it now since we're talking about things. Hang on one second.
Yes, sir. I'm not going to cut the video. I'm just going to sit here and vamp because it's real and people love it, It's show and tell time.
Yeah, I'll show you something.
All right.
I was going to do this in my
this is great.
Oh, you probably hear my child, my cat.
No, it's all good.
I
learned to unplug my my Amazon device when I do these things, so you don't hear my packages being delivered. So, I'm kind of curious to see what you're going to say.
Here we go.
Something's coming in the frame.
Honey.
I love the spontaneity of it all, but when look, I mean, you can feel the passion. It's real. What do you have?
I want to show you how much I'm going to prove that you and I are cut from the same napkin. Okay.
All right.
I've been clocking this the whole time. It's actually been distracting.
Are you serious? That's wild.
Oh, that's not all, man. Hang on.
Oh my. Please. You don't even know. We're going to have a conversation when we're done the podcast. He's
looking at it the whole time. I'm like, man, did he get in my room and steal my stuff?
Listen, it is, I'm telling you, this is a moment for you. And I think what I love, so what you just said about Song of the South, why I'm so happy you brought that up. I experienced my own toxicity when I first started talking about that on TikTok. I was called everything you could think of. Okay. I love you brought that up because it just proves a point. Things have become so hot. People have become so angry that you can't even discuss something like that without being vilified. And I will just come out and say it again. Song of the South is not racist. Song of the South can be discussed. It should be learned from. It is problematic in many ways, but it is a masterpiece. It is a technical marvel. And to erase that from our history is to not allow us a frame of reference. And when you erase history, then you are only doomed to repeat it. So I would not touch that conversation in the early days. I don't give a you-know-what anymore because I'm just so over it.
Beautifully spoken.
But Song of the South is a masterpiece.
I often ask people whenever I have the conversation, if ever I do, or I'm allowed to, when does intent come into play?
Online, you can't read intent. That's the problem.
Right. Well, I often tell people that, well, not often, but sometimes in the past, I've had to say, like, I'm not so sure there's such a thing as a bad word. Like, what does that mean? What is a bad word? Because you use certain words, and it's a word for, I hate to say it, but fecal matter or things like that. It's like, what makes the word bad? And then I say, well, I think it's the intent I would argue that ugly is a very bad word, and maybe more so than some of the other words that are deemed bad. Okay, so Song of the South, when it was it created with the intent to harm or to bring together? And I think, and this goes back to, you don't know what Walt would want. No, I do from research. I do. Um, Walt made Song of the South with the intent to show a very close-minded society unity between a white person and a black person. That is why they hold on the shot of the young boy reaching out and holding the hand of the black man. Do you know how like risky that was back then and how shocking that was for those people to see that and to show that unity of them holding their hands?
And nobody talks
It's
about
like
the fact that it's a story of divorce, which is also like way ahead of its time.
right, right.
It just gets
So
lost in all the race. I mean, because first of all, Uncle Remus is a folk hero prior to the movie.
right.
So why are we forgetting that? I think it's just the people that we're talking about don't know this stuff and they're blinded by ignorance.
Yeah, I would say, and we were talking about the Twitter days when I was getting ridiculed. I would say that they are destroying James Baskett's legacy. And an argument I heard often was James Baskett wasn't in the ride, and I would go, I know, and that's terrible.
Yeah.
He he sh- he should be like he should, but there should be a statue of him out front of the ride. Um, but what I mean by his legacy getting destroyed is that, and I'm preaching to the preacher here, but the last thing keeping his legacy in the public subconscious is being destroyed. Because they go on the ride, they hear the songs, they sing along, they know the words, they get older, and they go, where did that come from? They look it up, then they find out, they learn about James Baskett. And without that ride, that never happens.
And there's an
And that was my whole point.
There's an opportunity for conversation. You're on Bob Iger's
Right.
Best Friends with Oprah, and do a Disney Plus special. I'll just say it. And I shouldn't say it, so I'm going to choose my words very carefully. But we're gonna throw James Baskett out, and nobody wants to talk about Bobby Driscoll. Go do your homework on what happened to Bobby Driscoll. Okay, juxtapose Bobby Driscoll's fate, okay, with reality, and then let's talk. Okay, because nobody's out there talking about what's wrong with the fate of Bobby Driscoll. We'll prop him up, but okay, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, dude. People told me on Twitter or X, whatever, when the Chip and Dale movie came out, Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, and Peter Pan was the villain and he was washed up and fat and he was the evil guy. And I'm like, do you know how disrespectful this is to the guy? Like, this is actually what happened to him in reality. Like, and y'all are making a joke out of it. And the people went, oh, well, the filmmakers didn't know. And I go, well, first off, that's impossible.
I
That
don't
is
even know what you're
absolutely
talking
impossible
about.
if they did any kind of research.
Back up. What are we talking about? I know what we're talking about with Driscoll.
You poor innocent child.
No. I know what happened to Bobby Driscoll. What in the Chip and Dale's movie?
So Chip and Dale's, spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen it, in Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers, they literally make fun of Bobby Driscoll by turning Peter Pan into the villain because he aged and got older and grew up and he couldn't get work. So he turned into a fat, like balding, mean guy. It like implied he could be an alcoholic and all this stuff. Literally just making fun of Bobby Driscoll.
I didn't like in my mind. I'm like, did they animate him in the lying in the street? Like that's what my mind was. Like,
I mean, he's just no, but they just they make him a punchline. So and people tell me, they go, well, they didn't really know what happened to Bobby Driscoll, and I'm like, well, okay, that's no excuse. They should have.
Well, now that we've beat around the bush, just for everybody's clarity, Bobby Driscoll, he suffered the fate of so many child stars, and he became washed up, and I believed he died of an overdose. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
All right, let's move on.
I don't know about overdose. I don't know how they would have, unless there was something at the scene, but I mean, they didn't even know like who he was. He didn't have no identification on him or anything. I know that there were empty alcoholic bottles surrounding him. I do know that. So,
No,
but as far as
it's a
like,
sad story.
yeah, it's really bad.
But
He
I
was
didn't know.
found by
I didn't know
kids.
they taunted him like that. I mean, that's sick.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that's the whole point. I mean, the company should have known, they should have recognized that and should have been like, hey, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't make Peter Pan the villain of this movie. Use another character.
Yeah. Or it was done with purpose. Who knows anymore? I want to get back. I want to talk your artistry now. Let 15 years in the business. You start out.
Well, actually, 30, honestly. My dad put me into a vocal booth when I was 5. So
wow. So 15 years as a
signed
artist.
To Curb Records. Yeah.
So 30 years. Okay. 15 signed, and you initially, understandably, start off as Tyler Dean. Okay.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
my dad, he didn't want there to be any bias, so he had someone else pitch me to Curb Records, Mike Curb, as Tyler Dean. I went by my middle name.
So here you are, 15 years later, give or take, and Tyler Dean McDowell is having this moment parallel to something your father did in respect to Elvis's legacy, and you're doing it now with Walt's legacy. What does that mean for you career-wise to be able to come back to this point now where you can both be independent and stand independent as an artist, but then also honor and mirror something that your father did with his own legacy in respect to somebody else's legacy? Because it is your father's legacy.
Yeah, you say it like that, and I'm even thinking to myself, it sounds intentional, but it wasn't. I mean, it's Dad always jokes and says that Walt's my hero, but as I've told you, I have 2, and that is my dad and Walt. And Dad thinks that Walt's number 1. It's not even close. Of course, I'm going to admire my father way more, but and for the same reasons, like I've mentioned before. They were dreamers and made their dreams come true, and I'm just trying to do the same. And because I've always looked up to Walt, and because it means so much to me, I think it was just natural. I've been saying on Twitter and Instagram and everywhere else, like I just feel like what I said needed to be said by somebody. And I don't have a huge platform, but I have the ability to cut a song every now and then when I get a little extra money.
Understated.
So we put it together and. What'd you say? I'm sorry.
I said that was understated.
Yeah, well,
listen, you did it, and the thing is, it does feel natural. It doesn't. That's what's so striking to me is the parallel is there, and I can appreciate how, as an artist, you'd want to carve out your own thing, but it's got to mean something to you that this moment has lined up for you, and it now mirrors this whole thing, because it's if somebody else were to do this. I'm not saying that it wouldn't resonate, but this carries a different level of weight in terms of like the cultural zeitgeist.
Yeah, I never looked at it from that perspective. I'm interested. Like, it's interesting to me listening to you say it that way, because I'm just like, I never even thought about that. I mean, I have seen parallels in the past. Like, I was 27 when I released or recorded the Older Women video, and my dad was 27 when he had The King Is Gone. So I did see those parallels, but I didn't record I didn't record the Older Women song and do the video from me. A lot of people come up to me and they're like, I like the original better. And I go, well, me too. That wasn't the point. The point was to take the spotlight and kind of turn it back towards my dad a little bit. That's why he's in the video. But yeah, so there have been some parallels, but this is interesting. I never thought about it that way. I'm just waiting for Dick Clark to call me and put me on American Bandstand like he did for Dad.
It'll be Ryan Seacrest this time, but it'll still be Dick Clark production.
Yeah, if Dick Clark calls, it'll be kind of strange.
Hey, you never know with AI.
He was a good guy though, from what I heard.
Now you
What I hear.
mentioned Diane Disney. Is there a relationship there, or is that just was that old stories?
Yeah, just research.
Okay.
You know, like I said, I have tried to obtain every bit of information I can about Walt. So yeah, never got a chance to meet her. I do believe though, it's interesting you brought that up. My dad was, God, where was he? Somewhere out west, I think. And there was the show he was doing. They had reserved seating, and he had sent me a picture. It's probably still on my phone, even though it was years ago. I keep all my text messages. He had sent me a picture of two seats, and it was two Disneys. And this is going to sound slightly derogatory to Diane Disney. I don't mean it that way. It's just I know the Disneys were very private people. They clocked the seats and where they were. They kept an eye on where they were. And during the show, my dad looked at the two people and he was like, "Hey," he was like, "Are y'all related to Walt?" And the guy was, a bigger, like stronger guy, old people, the big guy. And he goes like that, like shook his hand. And the woman kind of shriveled up and all she does like that and hits him and goes, "No." And then the guy goes, "Yeah, no, no, we're not." And I wasn't there. I had to stay because I think I was still signed signed to the label at the time. So I wasn't on the road. But Dad told me that story, and I was like, I think that was Ron and Diane. I was like, because they were so private, and Diane didn't want anybody to know. And I think they went to my dad's show. I really do, which makes sense because they're about that age, about when he was having records, they would have been in their 30s, 40s. So I think Diane and Ron, but that's the story. I'm sticking to it.
Wow. And the Ron Miller, I mean, that's we could just go down a whole Disney conversation about that, because you bring up Ron Miller and there's 100 things I want to say, because that's a period of uncertainty for the company.
Yeah.
And Ron gets a lot of grief and a lot of flack. I mean, listen, he's a former NFL player, comes in to take over the Walt Disney Company. Do you think in over his head?
Well, I don't really know that much about Ron. I know that Walt, in his own words, said that, it took him a long time to convince Ron to come work for the company. He didn't want to do it. And that was when Walt was alive and Ron was still a young guy. So just the fact that he did
Right.
and stood up to the plate, and this is just my own personal opinion based on what little I know, just stepping up to the plate, I mean, that's commendable. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I want to ask you about this painting now. I'm trying to make sure I check off all my questions. You mentioned, obviously, I get the production aspect. You painted it separately. Okay. But where does this idea to tie, I mean, because you're using so many different mediums. So where does the inspiration come from to incorporate this painting?
Well, I mean, obviously, Disney, art, Disney. And my dad's a painter, kind of passed it on to me. I've got the poster for my older women music video over here. I wanted like a 1980s style Back to the Future, movie poster. So I did that. It's fairly large. And so I try to incorporate my artwork, whether it's digital or in paint, because I do all my logos and stuff. I do have a buddy of mine, Robert Holtby, who helps me out sometimes. Recently, he's helped me out. But for the most part, I've done all the stuff myself, all the album artwork and everything. So it's just, it comes natural in regards to doing it all, incorporating it all with my music. But this one in particular, I don't know. I mean, somebody last night on Twitter, I keep saying Twitter, X, they said Walt would never sit there and cry. And I was like,
Oh, I saw
well,
that.
art is subjective. I understand that. Like, first off, Walt himself said that there was a period in his life where, he couldn't pick up the phone without crying. So you're wrong there. But that's not really what it is. He's more just in deep concentration and, discouraged and disappointment. And nobody depicts him that way. We talked a little bit about this animatronic show coming up, which I'm scared of because, it's a magical life or whatever it's called. It's like Walt would not tell you that. Like, he would tell you it was rough. I mean, in his CBC interview, they ask him, they say, if you had it to do all over again, would you? And he thought about it and was like, I don't know. He's like, hope I don't have to do it all over again. And I know when he says that, it's funny, but I know he's thinking about those times when he was living in that bankrupt office, taking showers at Union Station, eating cold beans out of a can. I know that's what he was thinking.
People don't realize that Walt's affection for trains, which directly inspired Mickey Mouse Park vis-a-vis Disneyland, it was all birthed out of a depression. He was in his lowest point, and it was trains that lifted him out. So it's when people say they don't know what they're talking about.
No. So I wanted to show Walt for real. Like, not sitting there looking at what, Epcot, which is like, yeah, I love this. Like, no, he wouldn't. He might appreciate the original Epcot, because at least the theme park was trying to inspire his ideals, the concepts that he was hoping Epcot could inspire. But what is there now does not have anything to do with the experimental prototype community of tomorrow. So he would not be sitting there with a big smile on his face. And I wanted to depict him for real. And I thought it was going to be the album cover initially for the song. And I don't know how it came about. I was just like, you know what? I'm going to show myself, quote unquote, painting it and then unveil it at the end of the music video.
It just all makes sense. It all comes together. It's so beautiful and it's so heartfelt. And
thank you.
And again, I love these parallels, right? I was thinking this morning, I'm like trying to come up with my questions for you and then also draw these parallels. And at my first glance, I was like, there's a parallel here with your father and Elvis, and I couldn't crack it. And I'm going to say it, and now it's going to sound crazy but I believe this is a moment. And I believe it's like everything that you have done is meeting this moment, and we have been waiting for you. So what is next? Because it's out there. And I sure as hope that everybody in my audience is not just listening to this, but going out there and sending their emails. But what's next for you with this cause? And what's next for you as an artist?
So when you first started asking that question, I was like, well, I know what's next, because I've already got it in the cannon. But I always tell people I'm lining up my cannons ready to go, hoping one of them hits the mark. So I've already got one.
That's what Walt did.
Yeah, it's a passion project, and it's one that the Disney community, a portion of the Disney community, will love. It's another anthem, maybe not on a scale of like, caring about Walter, maybe not as important as this one, but one that I think people are really going to love, and one that I've wanted to do for almost 10 years, maybe 10 years now. But we've already recorded it, and I've got it, and we were going to do that first. But, like I said, I produce my own stuff, direct my own music videos, and I know what the video has to be. And it's going to take quite a considerable amount of money. Unfortunately, it takes money to make money, and Disneyland wasn't built on a shoestring budget. So the video that I want to do for this next song has to be done correctly. So hopefully, I'll find myself in a position where I can do that someday. But as far as what's next with this project in particular, I don't really know. I think the world will tell me. Dad, I'm sure you want to talk about parallels. I'm sure he had no clue what he was going to do when when he recorded it. He just went home and had a phone call from Dick Clark and said, I'm flying you out to LA and you're going to be on America's Bandstand, So maybe I'll get a call from somebody. I don't know. I just hope it's not somebody with a Mickey shaped badge.
Well, first of all, that's the call you actually want. If they call, you win. Disney. So what I had been saying for the longest time to people was the only way to do something during this whole thing. And I was talking about Rivers of America. And I think I've had the conversation with Joshua privately. You know, Joshua and I will do a 2-3 hour podcast and then talk for another hour and a half afterwards because we're so passionate
I'm
about.
gonna have to get my phone charger.
You know what I mean? But like so I think at some point I said to him, I go, somebody needs to embarrass them. Somebody just needs to embarrass them. And you did it artfully. And now it's incumbent on everybody listening. No, thank you. And now it's incumbent on everybody listening to get it out there and to further the embarrassment. Send the emails and get this music out there.
I will tell you, this will kind of dip into what I would normally talk about. Of course, I wouldn't normally just bring this up, but this is more music related. So I think we talked maybe before we were recording. I said, this is so interesting because I get to talk about other things that I'm passionate about, not just music. But the music business, in particular, the Nashville music business, it's tell people all the time, you think you may know, because you can ask people, do you think the music business is tough? And they go, oh, yeah, I'm sure it's bad. I'm like, yeah, it is. And you have no idea. Like you think you know, but it's not good. If I'm being honest with you, it's very not good. And they don't talk about it. And that's why it's dangerous. Like you can't Google why it's bad. And that means that they have it under control. Like it's what you see.
But you say that,
yes.
and we both know this. I mean, I was in LA in TV and film for 20 years. The general public doesn't know, but in the industry, these things are open secrets and everybody's keeping them. And that's how bad it is because people trade that, and toxicity is underselling it. They trade that for their own success.
Yeah, it's not good. So I'll just be completely honest with you.
Please.
When we released "Come to Nashville," which was the first song that I had released post label, so it was my first attempt as an independent artist. I did it all. Well, again, didn't do it all myself, but like I did all the promotion and everything myself. Obviously, there was a team of incredible musicians and stuff that brought it all together. But as far as like the business aspect, I did it like all me and never done anything like that before. And short story long, we released it and it got 7,000 views in less than 24 hours on a channel with no subscribers. Because when you go through a distributor, and if you've not had any videos put on a Vivo channel before, then they make a new channel. So it was a brand new channel, like screaming into a void. And we got 7,000 views in less than 24 hours. Pretty good for an independent artist. And it came to a halt, just stopped. And thought it was a little odd, but I knew that we had the second part of my little music video story coming out, which was Older Women. And I was like, this is a remake of a number one record. The original artist's son is doing it. The original artist is in the music video. I was like, if you want any chance of anyone from like my generation knowing who my dad is, all you got to do is sing a little bit of Older Women, and they probably go, oh yeah, I've heard that song. So I was like, this is, if the same thing happens for this one, I'm like, I'm going to know something's up. Not only did it happen, it was worse. Like the views did not even exceed Come to Nashville. And I released Almost There a few years later, which was last year, a remake of the song from Princess and the Frog. And we still have not cracked 4,000 views. And it just stays there. It doesn't move. And, I have a tinfoil hat fedora. I shaped it myself, but sometimes I think that there are nefarious forces out there trying to suppress certain people doing certain things. So you mentioned to everyone watching, it is their job now to take this and run with it. Yes, please, for the love of God, text it to people, share it, comment on it, like it. People on YouTube, they say all that stuff because it helps. So yes, if you're watching this and you want to make a difference, make sure you do your part, please.
Yeah. It's funny you're talking about all that stuff. People think like, oh, Post Malone, guy blew up overnight. He uploaded. No, he didn't just upload a video to YouTube. He had a whole machine behind him.
Right.
But
Yeah.
this is marketing, right?
I'm sorry.
I said, this is marketing. So this is how it works.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, yesterday we were like, I think we were at 1,700 and something views, and then we dropped down to like 1,500. I have the screenshots to prove it.
Yeah.
And the timestamp.
That happens on TikTok all the time.
Yeah, it's kind of strange. So.
I don't know how much of that's just issues with the metrics and you'll get them back, but also how do you really chart that?
Right.
But look,
I don't know.
What you have done, and by the way, I would love for you to come back and just talk shop, irrespective of this,
Absolutely.
please, because there's so much more to talk about.
I've thoroughly enjoyed this.
I have too, but you have, and thank you, but you have given us not just a gift, but you have given those that care a weapon. And I'm telling you, when I say this, it comes from the bottom of my heart, because there's a lot of things going on, and I'm very passionate about a lot of issues in the world and all of this. And I often will say that, worrying about the state of a theme park, and I'm very upset about the Muppets and all of this, but you got to pick and choose your battles, and I'll vent. But I've been wanting somebody to do something that would actually have an impact. And I know how much work you put into this. It shows as somebody that edits, as a producer, as a filmmaker, it shows. I mean, I could do an hour with you on just technical questions. You'd probably be like, talk to my DP. Okay. But you have given us a gift and a weapon. And I want to encourage everybody out there to use this, because I personally have been waiting for this. I didn't know where it was going to come from. I would talk to people and I'd be like, I'm like, what if I just like chained myself to Tom Sawyer Island and never left? They'd be like, well, you get banned from the park. I'd be like, I don't care about that. Right. But I'm like, but wait, what's that going to do? Like, they need to be embarrassed. And by shooting not a social media video, but by shooting a full on production, by shooting a music video in Disney under their nose, you have embarrassed them. They may not realize it yet, but I'm going to tell you, myself and everybody listening right now, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that they are embarrassed by this. And I want to thank you.
I'm probably not going to be able to do another one in there. I know that. My name will go off somewhere on a monitor.
Oh, no, we'll get it done.
Country singer.
No, they're not. I can't even say what I want to say to you right now. Okay. All right. Because you can get it done.
I think I know where you were going.
Don't worry about it. Forget about it. Tyler Dean McDowell, I'm giving you the last word, sir. Is there anything you want to say here?
I'm just going to say the first thing that came to my mind. Y'all have a zippity-doo-dah day.
It's time to spice up your kitchen with Pampered Chef. Pampered Chef has all the goodies from spatulas, mandolins, and amazing pots and pans, not to mention knives. Plus, don't miss out on small appliances like the deluxe air fryer and coffee maker. Spice up your kitchen today. Go to pamperedchef.com/PWS/Colleen Herman. pamperedchef.com/PWS/Colleen Herman. And with no estate plan, you could be leaving those you love the most with high taxes, probate fees, and an incomplete or divided estate and legal fights and fees. If you live in Florida, contact RK Law for a free consultation to discuss the options you have and the tools available to protect your home, savings, and estate for those you love the most. To get started, send an email to russell@rklawpro.com or call 786-566-2456 to set up your consultation today. That's russell@rklawpro.com. And if you're in the market for a 3D printer, visit flashforge.com. With printers starting at under $300, you can begin your 3D adventures today. Visit flashforge.com. And while you're online, head over to Etsy and the Theme Park Factory. The Theme Park Factory on Etsy is a great way to support this channel. pick up a Joe Coconut, and bring a little bit of the theme park factory to your home.